Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today is this video is going to be a very special video. This is actually a request from a subscriber and a good friend of mine. He said that a year or so ago he bought, out of curiosity, a whole bunch of Magic cards from the core set 2020. But he has no idea how to play. He bought a bunch of booster packs and was looking around online and asked if I would do a basic play video on how Magic the Gathering works. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I play Magic. I've played Magic for quite a long time. I'm a very casual player nowadays. I did my time in the tournament circuit, mostly local tournaments. I've never won any big grand prizes or anything. I'm not that good, but I really enjoy Magic, and I thought, why not? Why not do a basic how to play video? This is not going to be in any depth whatsoever. It's not going to be anything that's going to teach tactics or strategies. It is simply going to show how the game is played and how it's laid out and how it works. I love Magic the Gathering, and I think at its core the rules are very, very simple. What really gives it its longevity and the reasons why it's stuck around for as long as it has, I think, is that because the core rules are super easy, but the combination of cards, the way the cards work together, leave you with infinite possibility and infinitely different gameplay every time you play. Now, my friend who requested the video, he said that he had just bought I believe, just a bunch of booster packs, so maybe a box of boosters. But there are several products available in which to get started. The best of those are these pre-constructed decks. And these happen to be Planeswalker decks. This is Ral. It is a blue and a red deck, and I'll get into that in a minute, what that means. But these pre-constructed decks are great, especially if you're a casual player. They are not going to win you any tournaments. They're not built that well. They're well constructed as far as cards go, but they're not meant to win any sort of tournaments or anything. What's great about Magic the Gathering, it's kind of a blessing and a bane, is that it is a collectible card game. So to get the cards you want, you're either going to be buying single cards from a dealer or online, or you're going to be buying numerous amounts of booster packs in order to get the cards that you want or that you need to build the deck that you want. I prefer casual. It is my preferred style of play. If I play in any tournaments, it's only booster draft tournaments, and we'll talk about that more later, but I prefer to play casual. I love these pre-constructed decks. They come with sort of a theme behind each one of them. I'm a role player at heart, so the biggest thing for me is telling a story and building a deck around the theme. I'm a big fan of green and black. This is actually one of my favorites, Vraska, as well. But I'll be showing you some of that stuff today. So first, a basic explanation of what Magic the Gathering is. It is a collectible card game in which you collect these cards. And the goal, every player starts off with 20 life. Alright, and the goal of the game is to deplete your opponent's life total to 0. And to do that, you're playing cards. The cards consist of creatures. They consist of magic spells, and a number of other things, artifacts, those kinds of things. That's the basics. You have 20 life, and you are trying to stop the other player, your opponent, from depleting yours while you deplete theirs. It, at its heart, is a 2-player game, but you can play multiplayer formats. There are lots of different formats out there. There's Commander. There are, I think it's called Two-Headed Dragon. There's a lot of different ways to play Magic, and it's really, really a great game if you haven't jumped into already to try out. Although it can be quite the money suck if you're buying cards, packs of cards and stuff a lot. That's why I say to go with the pre-constructed decks. You're going to get, in each one of these, you get a pre-constructed 60-card deck, as well as I think 3 booster packs, though you can add cards to them as well too. Before we go any further, let's talk about the anatomy of a card. That's, I think, important to understand, to understanding how Magic works. So this is a basic card. This is called Wicked Guardian, and there are a lot of things on this card, but once you kind of know the flow of how the cards work, it becomes very, very simple. So this right up here is the title of the card, Wicked Guardian. These symbols over here are the casting cost of the card itself. So this card costs 4 mana, and we'll get into what mana is in a minute. It costs 3 colorless mana as well as 1 black mana in order to cast this card, to bring it onto the table from your hand. This section right here in the middle is simply a descriptor text. It is a creature, and it is a human noble. There are lots of other cards that will refer to this when it says target other creature or target human. That's where you'll find those factors. This is simply, this symbol here is what set it comes from, as well as its rarity. This is a common card. Black cards are common. Then you have the game text in here. Some cards will have this, and some cards will not. Some cards will have tons of it. Some cards will have very little. I chose this one because it's pretty straightforward. It says, when Wicked Guardian enters the battlefield, that means you play it from your hand to the table. You may have it deal 2 damage to another creature. Again, we're referring back to this again. Another creature you control. And if you do, you get to draw a card. So this card, the black cards, denoted by this skull symbol, do a lot of damage to themselves. They do a lot of life drain, that kind of stuff as well. So this card, when you play it from your hand to the table, or to the battlefield as they call it, you may deal 2 damage to a creature you control. And if you do, you get to draw a card from your deck. This little bit down here in italics is always just flavor text. And then the next important part is this little box in the corner here. This is the strength and toughness of the creature. So, and we'll go into that when I discuss how play proceeds and stuff as well. So, but just for now, remember that the number before the slash is your strength. The number after the slash is your toughness. Okay. Here's another card just to show an example. So this card is a monocolored card. It is 3 colorless, means you can use any colored mana to cast that. And then you have one of those, of this 4 has to be a black mana. This one's a little bit different. This is Centaur Peacemaker. This one costs 3, but it's 2 different colored mana. So in order to play this one, you would need 1 colorless, or 1 of any color, 1 green, and 1 white. And again, the rest of the card is exactly the same layout. Creature, Centaur Cleric. The rules text: when Centaur Peacemaker enters the battlefield, each player gains 4 life, and then their strength and toughness at the bottom. So that's basic anatomy of a card. We keep talking about mana. These are called land cards. There are 5 different colors in Magic. There are black and green, red, blue, and white. And these are land cards, and when they're played from your hand to the battlefield or to the table, they produce mana. And I'll get into that in a few minutes when we talk about how the game actually plays. As far as the table setup, let me get rid of these for a minute. You're going to have a deck of cards. Here's your deck of 60 cards. Okay, you're going to shuffle them up at the beginning of every game, so that they're randomly distributed throughout the thing. You, as far as the table setup goes, you can place this anywhere down in the bottom corner. Usually, I'm right-handed, so they usually always go into the right, but if you're left-handed, it's easier sometimes over here. And then from there, you're going to have sort of your mana field here. You're going to play your land cards down here, and then your creatures go up into this area here. So this is your sort of play area, your battlefield, as it were. The opponent's going to do the same on their side of the table, facing them as well. Most of the creatures and artifacts and everything are going to go up in this row, and then mostly your lands, sometimes your enchantments and stuff, and I'll show you enchantments later. We'll go down to this bottom row as well too, just so it sort of separates out the areas a little bit, and it makes it a little bit cleaner and easier for your opponent to understand exactly what's going on. Okay, so that's basic setup for the battlefield. Basic ideas behind the game. Let me just, we're going to use these cards again here as well too. So you're going to have a hand of cards. You draw 7 cards at the beginning of the game on your first turn, and you'll have a variety of different cards. You're going to want some land cards, hopefully, in your first draw, because those are the things that really power your ability to play these other cards. When it's your turn, there are a number of different phases. The beginning phase is where you're going to untap all your cards. And what tapping means is that when a card is down on the table, when you want to use a land card to produce mana, you're going to tip it sideways. That's called tapping. So you're tapping it sideways, and once you do, this produces 1 black mana. There are going to be numerous other cards out there that produce more mana or less. I mean, it just depends on the card, and the cards will all describe to you exactly how those work. A lot of the text, a lot of the rules beyond the basic rules will be on the cards, and they may have some keywords that you may have to refer to, but the rule book, the basic rule book and the comprehensive rule book are all free online as well. So you can refer to those certain keywords from there. Most of the rules for any card and how it works will be in this descriptor text section. So you're going to you have your land card here, you tap it for mana, it produces mana, which kind of just floats in this area until you use it to cast a card. When you cast a spell, a card is always a spell until it's actually cast, it's resolved. You'll pay the mana cost. In this case, it will be 4. It will be 3 of any color plus 1 black, and it will come to the table. Now, in your first turn, when you play a creature, they have what's called summoning sickness. I don't know if they still call it that. It's possible. I've been playing for a long time. They used to call it summoning sickness, which means that the turn that it comes into play, it cannot attack. It's simply it's still resolving itself. It's being cast from the ether or whatever. On your subsequent turn, it can then do whatever it needs to do. If you want to attack with it, the same thing. You're going to declare a target. That you're going to declare this is the target to attack, and you're going to tap it to show that it's been used. So tapping just basically shows that the card has been used, and in your first turn, in your first phase, the beginning phase, you're going to untap all your cards so that they are ready and available to be used again that turn. This is also where you have an upkeep phase. Any cards that say that they have an upkeep, it's going to happen during this phase, and then you're going to, after you draw or untap your cards and do any upkeep, you're going to draw a card. In this case, it's an extra swamp. The next phase is called the first main phase. This is where you're going to do stuff. You get to play 1 land per turn. Per your turn, you can only play 1 land. And then you get to cast any number of other cards that you want. So if you had enough mana to play both of these, you could play them both. You could play spells. Let me show you a spell card. Yeah, here's one, a good one. Dead Weight. This is an enchantment. It's an aura. You can see that here. You enchant a creature. So if you have a creature here, we'll actually use this one because you actually play this enchantment on your opponent. It says enchant a creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2 until it's unenchanted. So what you would do is, I would play this on, not on yourself unless it gives you some kind of weird benefit, but -2/-2 is actually bad. You don't want that to happen. It's going to lower your strength and your toughness by 2. So this would actually make it a 1/1 creature instead of a 3/3 creature. So you would cast this spell. This costs 1 black mana. You would tap your mana for that, and then you would enchant one of your opponent's creatures. It would go underneath to show that it is being enchanted and its power and toughness being lowered to some degree. Okay, that's your first main phase. Then you do any combat. So if you have creatures up here to combat with, you declare attackers. And you say, I'm going to attack with Centaur Peacemaker and Wicked Guardian. When you do so, you're going to, your opponent can declare blockers. So if they have any creatures that can block, they will do so if they want to. You don't have to declare it a blocker, but if you don't, the damage is going to come directly to your life total. So if, for instance, let's say this is my opponent's card, the Centaur Peacemaker, this is my card, the Wicked Guardian. I declare I'm going to attack with the Wicked Guardian. If my opponent decides not to declare a blocker, he's going to take 4 damage. He's going to take my power total to his life total. So he would go from the beginning of the game, if he had 20, he would go down to 16. Now, if I declared this as an attacker, my opponent could declare Centaur Peacemaker as a blocker. All right, and so what happens when that happens, when you attack and there's a block, is you're going to declare, or you're going to compare the power total of the attacker, 4, to the defense total, or of the blocker, of 3, and vice versa. So I would do 4 damage to the Centaur Peacemaker, which is higher than 3, which would destroy this. But we're also going to compare the strength of the Centaur Peacemaker, which is a 3, to the toughness of my Wicked Guardian, which is 2, which means that both these creatures would destroy each other, and they would go to the graveyard, or a discard pile, which is usually off to the side of your draw deck. There are lots of different cards that will let you draw cards or search your graveyard for different creatures and cards and such. But again, like I said, all of that kind of text will be written right here on each card. After combat is over, you get a second main phase, which means that if you still have mana that's untapped, you can play more cards from your hand. And then the last step is the end step, and it's sort of any kind of cleanup or any kind of cards that say during your end step, do these types of things. That is the basics of Magic the Gathering. It is a very simple, at its core, a very, very simple game. Every time you buy one of these pre-constructed decks, you're going to get one of these. This is a on your turn sort of reference card, which you can use if you're a new player. Again, it helps very much to reference what I just talked about: your beginning step, your main phase, your first main phase, your combat, your second main phase, and your end step. And everything is detailed out about what goes on during those phases. So this is a very handy card to have, and like I said, the rules are free online, but you get one of these every time you buy one of these pre-constructed decks. Now, 2 things I want to talk about before I end this video. Where the game gets a little bit confusing to new players is a concept called the stack. So, whenever somebody casts a spell, it basically goes into an area called the stack. Okay, so if I were to play Dead Weight, and let me see if I can draw out a card here that'll make sense for this. It creates a thing called a stack. It is a series of cards that are trying to interact with each other. And this is where the game sometimes gets a little bit confusing. Okay? Sorry, I should have been prepared for this, but I'm trying to find a card that will make sense to this whole thing. Yeah, let's do this. Okay. So I, as a black player, decide I'm going to cast Dead Weight. Okay? On a creature. I want to play it on the Centaur Peacemaker. Okay? Assuming that I have blue cards in my hand as well, too, and we'll get to how building a deck works in just a second, I decide that I'm going to play this card. It's an instant card, which means that I can play it at any time during the game. Okay? So I cast this card, which cost me 4, right? Cost me 5, 3 colorless, and 2 blue mana. And it says, return target creature to its owner's hand. You may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Ral, Caller of Storms, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, you shuffle it. Okay, so just to give you an example, this is Ral, Caller of Storms. Okay, he is a planeswalker, which I will not get into in this video because it's a whole nother ball of wax, but there are planeswalker cards out there that are sort of like creatures. They are planeswalkers, and they play a little bit differently than normal. Anyhow, this card is currently on the stack, right? Dead weight. I decide I'm going to play Ral's Dispersal. It goes on top of this card, and now the black player, or if I'm playing black, I get a chance to play another card on top of this if I want. I say I pass. I don't have another card to play. How the stack works is it's going to go in reverse order. It's going to resolve in reverse order. So this card, Ral's Dispersal, will act first. It says return target creature from to its owner's hand. I'm going to return the Centaur Peacemaker to my hand. Okay, this resolves, goes to my graveyard. Then this resolves, but because there's no target for it anymore, it can't resolve. There's nothing for it to do, and it will just simply go to my graveyard. Okay, that's how the stack works. It simply works in reverse order. So you play a card, your opponent plays a card, you play a card, opponent plays a card, and then they resolve in the order from the top down. It's a little confusing to new players. It's still kind of confusing to me sometimes. Sometimes you'll get a lot of cards on the stack, and it just kind of blows your mind. But if you simply take your time and remember that they resolve in reverse order, going down from the top down, it works out pretty well. And if you have any, feel free to discuss that with your opponent, the person you're playing with, and they usually all resolve pretty quickly. But the stack is one of those things that can get a little bit confusing. Now let's talk about building decks. So the subscriber and my friend who had requested this video, from what I understand, he bought a bunch of booster packs, which means he didn't buy a pre-constructed deck. Here's another one I'll show you too. I just got this one. My daughters bought this for me for Father's Day. This is the Oko Planeswalker deck as well too. I believe this is blue and black cards in this set. So if you don't have one of these, you're going to have to build your own deck. There's a couple of rules when building decks. To make it a legal deck, it has to have 60 cards or more. You can have more than 60 cards, but the ease of play becomes a little bit more difficult in that respect, because the object of this game is getting the cards that you need when you need them. And so having 60 cards is sort of that's the minimum amount of cards that you can have in your deck. But having more means that you have more cards that you need to cycle through to get to the cards that you want. Each deck can have a maximum of 4 cards of the same name. So for instance, this deck has 2 dead weights in it. In fact, it actually has 3 because I just discarded one. But you can have up to 4 copies of any given card in your deck. No more than 4. Okay? And that's about it as far as building a deck. You want some synergy between your cards. These pre-constructed decks do that. You can build a deck out of a single color. I think that's probably easiest for new players. You want to construct a deck completely of black cards, or white cards, or red cards. All those colors individually tend to work together very, very well. A lot of the decks, pre-constructed decks you're going to buy, are either 2 or 3 colored decks, meaning that they're going to combine the different things. So for instance, this Vraska deck is a black and a green deck, or green and black, and there's a combinations of black and green cards in this deck. There are certain cards that, like we showed earlier, the Centaur Peacemaker, they have 2 different colors, so these are multicolored cards, and there are many that are simply monocolored as well. But as you can see, there's a mixture of green and black cards in here. So, really, there's no... in the past, I've done a 5-color deck before. It's very, very difficult to pull off because you want your deck to work. You want it to achieve a certain thing. So for black, it's going to be draining life. Its main goal is to drain life from creatures and from your opponent, as well as bringing cards back from your graveyard and stuff as well too, using the dead pile, dead creatures to bring them back to life, those kinds of things. White is very much about like protection and gaining life. So you'll see a lot of white cards that say your creatures gain number of power and toughness. You'll gain life back to your life total and such. Blue is very much control. Things like dispelling cards, dispelling magical spells, taking control of your player's creatures, those types of things. Red is very much fire. It's about things like fireballs and lightning bolts and direct attack spells. And green is very much the forest. It's big creatures or little creatures that it makes big by pumping them up with lots of different abilities and spells and stuff. So a brief primer to Magic the Gathering. I hope this helped if you're a brand new player. Like I said, I'm not going to go into strategy and stuff. I'm not the person for that, to teach those kinds of things. I'm a very casual player, and I really love just to build themes. I am a role player at heart, and I like to build decks that sort of emulate the role-playing experience. I want it to tell a story. And so I'll build a deck around a planeswalker, around certain characters. I'll build a deck around themes like angels or dragons or goblins. And that's a lot of fun for me, building decks based around different characters and or creature types or an idea of some kind. So until next time, I am Questwise. Stay safe, my friends, and game on.